I'm Kristin Noland, speculative and crime fiction editor. Welcome to the Noland Editing YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So today we're going to talk about 5 common writing mistakes. Now, every author struggles with some aspect of storytelling. Having worked with over 30 authors on over 70 novels, I know that's true. Maybe you're a newer author or an emerging author, but even successful best-selling authors do struggle with some aspects. So you're not alone. In my experience, there are 5 common struggles: telling, not showing. I know, stay with me on this one. Weak hooks, consistency of perspective, lack of conflict, and impossible simultaneous actions. So we're going to start with telling, not showing. There's a reason that you've probably heard this hundreds of times. It's the most common struggle. I come across telling too much and not enough showing in every novel I've edited. Telling is when the narrator informs the reader of everything from backstory to what is happening, from setting descriptions to relaying emotions and revealing intentions. Showing is when the characters interact with one another through their actions, dialogue, expressions, and body language. It's more difficult for us to show than tell, which is why this mistake is made so often. Telling is our default setting. It's how we talk to people when we're relaying a story to a friend. We give them the facts, maybe a bit of dialogue. And since the narrator of your story is the one telling it, it feels natural for us to actually tell. But describing everything a character sees and experiences by relaying facts keeps the reader at a distance rather than make them feel like they're an active participant or actually in the scene. They want to be in the story. They want to feel what the characters feel. So let's take a look at an example of relaying backstory through telling and then showing. So for telling, in high school, Mary was shy and she only had one friend, Jenna. She didn't like to go to parties or even go to the movies. She liked to hang out at home or at her friend's house where there was only them and their families, and sometimes even the families were too much for her. So let's take a look at showing. In high school, you were always shy, Jenna said. You didn't like parties. We never went to the movies. We just hung out your parents. Sometimes you couldn't even handle that. Mary rubbed the handle of her coffee mug. You were my only friend. I appreciated that. I still do. So all I did was turn the narrator's explanation into dialogue exchange between the two. But did you feel closer? I know I felt closer to the characters. So that's the difference between showing and telling. You have about 6 to 10 seconds to hook your reader. That equates to about 4 to 10 lines of text. So you really want to grab them right off the bat because, there are hundreds of books they're looking at that day, and you want to get their attention to buy your book. So you need to have a strong hook. In our current impatient society, when everything is immediate gratification, many readers are going to stop reading if the story starts by explaining the history of the world or telling the backstory of the world. So it was a dark and stormy night. We all know that beginning. And while Shelley's "It was a dark and stormy night" will draw some readers in, people are reading it mostly now because they assume it's a great story. Today's trend is to start with something a bit more exciting. Try leading with some type of action. It doesn't have to be an alien attack in progress, exploding bombs, but a character we should be doing something. Now, please don't have them wake up. Waking up is an action, yes, but it isn't interesting, and it's been used so often that it's become cliche. So try starting the story with a different type of action other than waking up. An action could simply be as possible as saying, "Lucy punched the back of the bus as it pulled away." Now, you may be tempted to tell the reader she missed the bus that would have taken her to work or to her date, but the reader will understand she missed her ride, and where she was going could be revealed through actions or dialogue. So in my example, Lucy says, "That's just great. I'm going to miss my audition." She switched her violin to the other hand and pulled out $10 from her sweatshirt pocket. That'll get me exactly nowhere. The character can give away a bit of what's happening or why something is happening, and then the narrator can expand, but the action should keep continuing on. So it should be a balance between action, characters, dialogue, or internal thoughts, and narrator explanation, then action. So it should be a balance between all of them. The narrator shouldn't go into where the audition is, why it's so important, how many years she's been practicing, and describe what the street looks like. It slows down the story too much. All that information really isn't exciting enough to keep the reader interested. We still want to keep them interested even after the first 6 to 10 seconds. So instead of just telling the reader where the audition is and why it was important, reveal them through the actions and character dialogue. Another common mistake is consistency in perspective. Perspective is difficult to adhere to because you, the author, know exactly what every character is thinking, feeling, their intentions behind what they do. So unless it's an omniscient narrator, your narrator shouldn't know all of these things. They shouldn't be revealed to the reader. If you're a new emerging author, I caution you to watch writing in omniscient. It is very skilled technique, so I want to caution you that it might not be the best choice for you on your first or even third novel. You want to get your writing underneath you before you would try something like omniscient. So in first and third, you want to make sure that what you write can be known by your perspective character. So in a lot of stories, the main character is the only perspective character where the narrator follows that person throughout the story. Or it could be, each chapter, or every other chapter is from a different person's perspective. So that second person would be your perspective character in that chapter. So what happens is we drop the point of view when we're breaking that perspective consistency. So Alexa wondered why Caleb was staring at her. Then he pointed to his head to let her know her hair was on fire. Since the narrator is revealing what Alexa is thinking, Alexa is the perspective character. She's first. She's the first person we were introduced to. So the narrator can't actually know why Caleb pointed to his head. And in this example, he pointed to his head to let her know her hair was on fire. Well, the narrator can't actually know that. So this reveals Caleb's intentions, but it's a shift in perspective. His intentions need to be revealed through his actions, dialogue, or the perspective character's reactions. So here's the rewrite. Alex wondered why Caleb was staring at her with his eyes wide. He pointed to his head, then at her. She reached back and cinched her fingers, then yanked the rag from her apron and covered her head over her fiery locks. So the revision shifts the story back to Alexa's perspective. We still understand that her hair is on fire, and Caleb is still pointing to his head and letting her know that that is, but it's not just stated that he pointed his head to tell her her hair was on fire. The revision shifts that back. So another common writing mistake is a lack of conflict. A lack of conflict is most noticeable when things come too easily for the characters. I'm going to put poor conflict in this category as well. An example of poor conflict is when issues could be solved if the character simply talked it out or even asked a question. So for external conflicts, the characters should try and fail to do something. Their plans should be thwarted. The antagonist throws a spanner into their works. And internal conflicts should also be present. The should I, shouldn't I debate, deep contemplation about their feelings, about their past, their future. And while your characters will win sometimes, in almost every scene, they should be worse off at the end than they were at the beginning because of the conflict that happens. Conflict leads to tension and suspense. Most likely the reader knows that the character will get out of a certain situation, but it's how and when that keeps them up. Without conflict, the story is going to read a bit flat. Even uplifting, happy novels have conflict, so the reader enjoys the success of the characters more. So you want to make sure your story has enough conflicts and it's big enough, both internal and external, that your readers worry about them and root for them. Increase the severity of these conflicts as the story progresses to build that tension and suspense. When things come too easily for your characters, your readers can't actually relate because things don't come easily to us most often. Now, it does happen sometimes, and it can happen in your novel sometimes, but for the most part, you're going to be setting roadblocks and conflict from other characters into it in order to help the reader not only enjoy the story, but also feel like they can bond with the character, like they can relate to them. And that helps them feel like they're part of the story. Possible simultaneous actions. That's the next one. And this issue is on a smaller scale, but it's no less important. Mostly I'll see this issue with dialogue. It's when two things are happening at the same time that can't actually be done. Um, it's not it's not your only problem, she said, sipping her coffee. A character can't speak and drink at the same time, and I know a lot of people say we can smile and say lines of dialogue, and we kind of can, but not particularly. You smile big, it's really hard to talk at the same time. It's weird. So um, try not to have characters smile and talk, but definitely don't have them drink and talk because that is truly impossible. There are less obvious instances, though. Here's an example. Running to the cab, he opened the door and hopped in. A character can't actually run and do those other things simultaneously. Can you picture a guy running down the street, opening the cab door while he's running and jumping in while he's running? It's actually impossible. So you want to watch for these things. And I think these happen often when authors are trying to vary their sentence structure. Like they have a lot of sentences that are subject verb and they want to mix it up because if you read every sentence structure all the same, it does become a bit boring to read. For instance, maybe too many sentences start in a row start with the word he. But they can't think of it a different way to structure the sentence at the time because they're just trying to get it out, or they go back to revise. And they end up putting an ing word on the front of the sentence, which is fine as long as it agrees with the verb. Anyway, if here's a tip: if three sentences in a row start with the same word, that's when you want to try to mix it up. So watch your places in your novel where that happens, and so you can vary the structure. But be careful not to let them perform too many simultaneous actions that can't be done concurrently. A way to check for this is to try to do the things yourself. Maybe not chasing the car thing and hopping in. Yeah, don't do that. That can be dangerous. But maybe try drinking and talking at the same time. Or one of my favorites is try to wink and frown at the same time and see how that feels. See if that feels natural at all. Obviously, there are more mistakes that we authors make, but these are the ones that are most common and the ones I come across most often in the manuscripts that I edit. Telling, not showing, weak hooks, consistency of perspective, lack of conflict, and impossible simultaneous actions. If you're struggling with your speculative or crime fiction novel, contact me. I'd love to chat. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and that's it for today. Happy writing and revising.